everyone, hope you're doing alright. Hope the January blues aren't getting to you too much. I'm going to take a look at these shelves today. I don't know if you remember the last time we looked at these shelves, they were full of quite a lot of bare metal. This top row, is now entirely painted. Hooray! This is my my undead army that I started, I think it was about 6 years ago. That's pretty shocking. And I got it to a certain point and I wanted to play through the Terror of the Lichmaster series from 2nd Ed, Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And so I rushed out the figures that we needed to play that game, and then the rest sort of stalled. But I don't know if any of you are visitors to my blog. If you are, thank you. If you're not, I'll put a link in the comments below, because it's a bit hard to read the name. I sort of struggle over the vowels. There's too many M's for me to pronounce properly on screen. So I'll put a link down there. But do go and check it out. I will be putting pictures of these guys up on there. And if you dig back to the Reign of the Lichmaster posts, they explain a little bit about the concept of this army, but I'll talk about that in just a few moments' time. Ignore this bottom shelf, which is still largely unpainted. This is largely unpainted, but actually fairly recent acquisitions. Oops. This is my Night Goblin army that I'm going to be painting hopefully later this year now. Hopefully in the autumn I'm going to start on these guys, but they're like my prize, if you like. They're my reward for finishing off all of the other armies that I've got dotted around the place. So I'm not touching them, not touching painting these guys until I've done everything else, which means that probably what I'll be doing is collecting some more of these guys, so there'll be even more for me to paint when I come to do it. But I'm looking forward to it. I hope this is going to be a fun project. Anyway, back to the subject in question. Finished armies. Now that's my challenge. Okay, I have mentioned this in a previous video. This is my challenge from September 2022, September just gone, round to August this year. My challenge is to get all of my part finished armies finished. And that's being tied in with the Odds and Sods challenge that is being run in one of the Oldhammer communities. So that's giving me some good incentives. And the theme for that in December was War Machines, Machineries of Destruction, which was good because I had some skeleton chariots, including the undead Machineries of Destruction chariot box that I hadn't painted, that I needed to paint, and it also gave me a reason to get back onto this army as a proper Deadcember challenge, which I've been planning to do for the last 3 years and haven't managed to finally get back on this and get these guys done. It's been a while since we last looked at a complete army. The last one that I looked at was my Orcs and Goblins army, which is over there. And I said I was going to show you some more, and 2 months have gone by, and I wasn't able to show you any more because, not that I haven't completed any more armies. I completed my barbarians, but I had those out on the table for a previous painter's progress, and really I was only adding like a dozen barbarians to the force, just finishing off painting the ones that I had. So it didn't really feel worth getting those out on the table. And then I painted a forest dragon, a worm, for my wood elf army, but that doesn't complete the wood elf army. I've still got a unit of cavalry to do for them at some point later this year, so I wasn't able to show you that one. But this army, my undead army, is now complete. That's a lie. That's a lie, because I haven't painted my Die Hard Miniatures undead Minotaur. I don't really know what I'm going to do with him in the army, but I have him, so he may as well go there. So I haven't finished him. And I had for a while some of the Red Duke horses to make some like Blood Dragon vampire types for the army, but I didn't have riders for them, so I have recently acquired from Crusader Miniatures some Teutonic Knights, and I quite like the look of painting these guys up in red and black armour and making them very vampiric. I think they will work quite nicely, so I've got 3 of those to go in the army that I haven't painted yet because they only arrived last week. And along with them I picked up this guy because Crusader Miniatures, their stuff is sold by North Star, and North Star had this rather lovely sort of armoured white guy, so he arrived last week as well, so I haven't painted him yet. So those 5 figures are outstanding, but the rest of these guys are finished. So at the start of this project I had, as I said, the figures for the Terror of the Lichmaster campaign done. So I've got Krell, the new Krell, not the Krell from the second ed scenario pack, and his host of skeletons. I've got the undead villagers of Bogle's Farm and Jimbrin's Mine for when those communities were overrun and turned into undead risen in the Lichmaster's forces. And instead of the host of zombies that appears under Mikhail Jackson, I decided I don't like zombies, basically. I like skeletons, I don't like zombies. So I decided to do another host of skeletons, and these guys are based on the Lichmaster Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay series, where Krell's place is basically taken, I don't know why, by another character called Zwemmer, and he's got his own lieutenants, and they fill exactly the same role that Krell and Mikhail Jackson do in the tabletop scenario. They've just got different names, and their background is that they're part of this band called the Blue-Blooded Bandits, lots of B's to say, and the idea is that they are noblemen, or the sons of noblemen, who decided to take to a life of adventuring and brigandry, and ended up worshipping chaos and were imprisoned and entombed in a barrow that was then discovered by Heinrich Kemmler, the Lichmaster. If you don't know the story, Heinrich Kemmler, according to the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay series and the second ed scenario book, he was a student of magic who studied at one time at La Maisontal Abbey, and was exiled from the community for dabbling in the black arts, cast out, left to starve in the wilderness. In his wanderings came across, when he was near death, came across or became possessed by a chaos demon, who gave him a big black sword and offered him the deal that he would give him immense power and eternal life, provided that he kept slaying people with his big black sword, and dedicating the souls to his demon patron. So that's how he became a powerful necromancer. Now, I did have the when did it come out? 4th edition, the big tall Heinrich Kemmler figure. I did have him when I was a kid, but gave him away, don't have him anymore. The original Heinrich Kemmler figures are stupid expensive, and I'm not a big fan of them, quite honestly. I'm not that keen. So I've decided to go for an on foot and a mounted version of Heinrich Kemmler, just to cover all the bases. And this is a Bob Ollie wizard, currently sold by Essex Miniatures, that I have sort of dressed up a bit, put some more of the sort of very distinctive, and it's kind of like a crab thing that he's got on his helmet in the illustrations by John Blanche and Ian Miller. So yeah, I've gone with that, and he's got an owl familiar, because why not? So he's my stand-in Kemmler. Kemmler spelled with one M in the original version rather than the 2 later on. Not quite sure why they changed it. And just there is a pun in the name there. It's kind of 2 things. He's based on named on Heinrich Himmler, one of Hitler's aides, but also on a guy called Heinrich Kramer, who was an alchemist, a medieval alchemist. So I think it's probably an amalgamation of those two names, but somebody within Games Workshop can clarify that or not, depending on whether they're listening to the video. So that forms like the basis of the army. But I then wanted to expand the whole army to be Kemmler themed. So the premise is that he's taken over Jimbryn's mine, he's taken Vogel's farm, he's taken Frugelhofen. He then marches on La Maison Tal, and that's where we find him in Vengeance of the Lichmaster, the scenario that was in the Citadel Journal, and he's marching in with the intention of exacting his revenge on the monks that threw him out in the first place. So then we have the monks of La Maison Tal, and of course I have taken it as read that Kemmler is successful in his siege of La Maison Tal, and the monks are eradicated, and so we've added the dead monks of La Maison Tal to his army. Now these take two forms in the scenario. There are the younger fighting monks, the warrior monks, and the older wizardly monks. So I have got the younger fighting monks here, and the older wizardly monks with their slightly more elaborate robes, and these were based on the John Blanche painting for the Vengeance of the Lichmaster on the cover of the Citadel Journal. So they're all in red robes with various yellow and black adornments on them, and these are an assortment of wraiths and wights and various things from various manufacturers. There's some Citadel Nazgul in here, there's some Alternative Armies wraiths, there's some former Harlequin wraiths, there's some Raffen bits and pieces, basically anything that I could find that was either skeletal and skeletal in a cloak, or robed but with no visible body. And there are more of them than there are monks described in the scenario. My theory is that this Abbey of La Maison Tal has been in existence for quite some time. There are probably quite a few monks in the catacombs that could be joined to the ranks. Of course, there are also two particular features of the scenario. There is the mechanical warrior, which in the scenario is represented by a Dalek. I didn't have a Dalek to hand. But next time I find a Dalek, I will paint a Dalek and I will put him in this force as well. But for the moment, I have a stand-in. This little Chaos Warrior dude here, who looks like he's entirely composed of tin or some other description. Empty animated suit of armour. So he's my mechanical warrior for the moment. And the feature of the scenario, which is the Black Ark, or the Black Ark of the Covenant, depending on which bits you read, which also features in the Lichmaster One Fantasy Roleplay campaign. And this is a big chunk of warpstone that has been captured from Skaven by the senior monk of La Maison Tal Abbey, and is being held in its vaults. And so in this case I have repurposed Vampire Count's Black Coach, which this is going to be heresy, but to be honest it's not a model that I've ever been a big fan of. I just find it's a bit silly, a coffin shaped coach. I know, silly is okay, but it's a bit too silly. So this, I have chopped the coach down, and now it's just a big casket on wheels, drawn by these rather lovely undead oxen, I think from Fenris or Fenril, one of those. I keep getting those confused. Anyway, I shall show you the chariots that came with them in a minute. So yes, with of course the corpse cart wraith riding it. So that's my that in my head anyway contains the Black Ark. For each of the units, Krells and the Blue-Blooded Bandits, I have given them a chariot with an alternative rider in. The Blue-Blooded Bandits one is the Machineries of Destruction chariot, so that was appropriate to paint for the challenge for that month. The Krell one has got an old Citadel Chaos Warrior in the back. Now this is the Chaos Warrior that appeared in the back of the John Blanche Undead diorama that's featured in the 3rd ed rulebook. And I tried to paint him to match as closely as possible, and the reason for that is that the Undead Army book, the 4th edition Undead Army book, when it was only Undead, not Vampire Counts and Tomb Kings, that was the first army book that I got, and it mentions Krell, but it didn't show any pictures of a miniature of Krell. I don't know that the miniature of Krell was out at that point. So I had a copy of the 3rd ed rulebook at that time, and so in my head, here's a guy with a big black axe who's in charge of a host of skeletons. That's Krell. So in my head, that's always been Krell. Although I now have the other Krell leading my regiment on foot, I wanted to nod to that by having him there in the back of the chariot. And having him in the chariot sort of disguises the fact that the height difference is quite pronounced, because he's a pre-slaughter. He's a bit smaller than the other figures, but he's got a good place of honour there in the back of the chariot. And the colour scheme that I've gone with for not just for the chariot but then for the rest of the unit, the sort of yellows with the red heart motif and things, is also taken very much from that John Blanche Undead diorama. That's why I chose that. And the green speckled front to his chariot is supposed to be an homage to the giant mushrooms that were in that diorama. I have got 3 Screaming Skull Catapults, Skull Chuckers, but they were already finished. So because they're in the scenario, they attack Frugalhofen, so they were all finished, ready for that. Everything else, so the raids before Deadcember this year, they had been base coated in the red for their robes and washed, and the robes have been highlighted mostly, but I hadn't done any of the decoration, so that's basically what I did on them, was paint lots of frilly yellow bits. But that's and the 2 chariots were completely unpainted, so they've been painted during December. Everything else that I am now going to mention had a basic bone dry brush, and then I ran out of momentum 6 years ago and didn't finish painting them. So what I've been doing on the rest of these guys is highlighting them, painting in their clothing, washing that, highlighting that, doing their weapons. I'm still not entirely finished, I have to be totally honest. They're all painted, but I have a few bases to do still. And there's a couple of shields that are missing that I need to paint. So not entirely finished, but much closer than they were, and hopefully by the time I've got pictures up on the blog, which may even be by the time you see this, who knows, those will be finished and they will be ready to go. But the rest of the army is based on the idea that Duke Tancred of Britannia, who is mentioned I think in Vengeance of the Lichmaster as the relief force that's coming to help the monks of La Maison Tal, he has been completely defeated, and his Britannian forces have been added to those of the Lichmaster. So they've got peasant archers, we've got units of spearmen, we've got a peasant levy with agricultural implements, and a unit of knights on horseback. And they are all painted in the blue and white colour scheme that is associated, apparently, I did a little bit of googling, apparently associated with Duke Tancred. And again, there's a mix of figures here. There's some Citadel plastics, there's some former Harlequin stuff. A lot of them, though, are the Keltos miniatures that are currently sold by Brigade Models. I'm a big fan of the Keltos skeletons, and they're not expensive, so they form quite a lot of them. And the cavalry, there are some Essex horses. I definitely recommend, if you're looking for undead horses, you check out the Essex ones. I'm not a big fan of the Bob Ollie skeletons, even though with a Bob Ollie Heinrich Kemmler I really should have some Bob Ollie skeletons. They're just, the heads are too big, they look massively out of proportion. While I can get away with some Bob Ollie people in the flesh, because actually the normal skeletons are probably a little oversized, and the Bob Ollie oversizedness kind of makes it work. The Bob Ollie skeletons just don't mix in with any other manufacturers of skeletons, so didn't take those, but the horses are very, very good, and also some Ratham from the times when I used to be an importer of Ratham miniatures. They're in there as well, and 3 regular undead chariots. I've got another set of the horses from the Machinery of Destruction to mix up a little bit. They're such a pain. These undead chariots were the first boxed plastic kit that I ever got. It was long after the Skeleton Horde kit was available, when they were just for 4th edition selling them as boxed skeleton chariots, and I remember putting it together with polystyrene cement and stinking the house out, and getting it all over the place. I hate these plastic kits. I think they're very versatile kits. I think at the time they were probably the best plastic kits available, but I still really hate assembling them, and a number of these fell to pieces again when I was trying to paint them, probably because I was using super glue, not polystyrene cement, but it's just easier and it's quicker and it doesn't stink the house out, so that's what I'm using. Yeah, but hopefully they're together now and they're staying together. So certainly they'll stay together if I leave them on the shelf, but the aim is definitely to get them on the table and have a big fight with them. I should just mention while I'm here the one other Bob Ollie figure that I haven't really quite figured out how he's going to fit in, but I think he's a necromancer, probably, was the Bring Out Your Lead special edition model this year. So I felt like I had to paint him and put him in the army, and I've sort of styled him after Christopher Lee in all of his various guises. So he's got a Saruman beard, and he's got the red and black Dracula cloak, and he's got a kind of what's that brown tweed suit. Anyway, the brown tweed suit that he wears as Lord Summerall with a yellow shirt, so he's got sort of yellow underdress, and then the borders of his robe are that kind of checked tweed look, and he's got a Chinese dragon on his robes as another nod to a famous Christopher Lee character. And rather fittingly, while I was painting him, I was listening to Christopher Lee reading various horror stories, so there you go. I had a bit of a Christopher Lee day painting him. My general listening, for anyone who's interested, throughout the whole of December for these guys, started off with the works of M.R. James. Thank you, Mike, for putting me on to M.R. James. I hadn't actually listened to any of his stuff or read any of his stuff before, but Michael Horden reading M.R. James was a good companion for a week or so, and then I moved on to, I found a playlist from a guy who calls himself Bite-Sized Audio. If you've not come across Bite-Sized Audio, I can recommend it for Victorian and early 20th century ghost stories. It's got that very British sort of plum custard plum custard, that's not right, plum voice anyway, way of presenting it. He presents it very properly, so it was very good ghost storying for Christmas. Enjoyed that a lot, and it obviously tied in quite nicely with painting dead things. So hooray, that's another army ticked off. Well, it will be when I've done the bases. Ticked off. Oh, should I mention something about the bases? I should mention something about the bases right while I'm here. You've got time. When I did these in the first place for Terror of the Lichmaster, I had a big 8x4 foot snowy terrain that was designed on the Frogelhorn Valley. Had places for each of the things to use as a campaign map, and then you could take small sections of it and make a bigger version of the mine. Have a look on the blog, all of the stuff is there. Haven't got it out to play on games for quite a long time. I did get it out recently to take some photos with these guys on. It needs a little bit of repair because it's been in storage for 5 years since I last played with it. So the idea was to base these guys on snow, but quite honestly I never really get that board out because it's so big and so cumbersome, and I have to move everything to get it out again. So I mostly play on a grassy board. So I was like, do I rebase everything? Now I've based it with snow, do I rebase everything on the same as everyone else that I've got. So what I decided to do in the end was go for part snow, part dirt, part grass, and my rationale is that as the undead army marches, it brings frost and snow and winter with it, but that's going to fall in varying degrees and leave patches open, or it's going to start melting in places, and so there'll be some dirty coverage. So now I hope that it will look okay on both settings. That's the plan. We'll find out when I actually get this army on the table and try and play it on grass and see what it looks like, but on the shelf I'm quite happy with how it looks. So thank you for joining me for that ramble through December's completed army. May there be another one very, very soon. Completed army, I think there will be. I'm working on January already. Yeah, I hope that was of interest. Please don't forget, if it was of interest and if you'd like to hear more, to subscribe, to hit the alarm button so that you get notifications, and just leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you'd like to see next. If there's something else that you have spotted out of the corner of your eye and you'd like to know more about, do let me know. Or if you'd like me to stop wattering on about my own collection and doing show and tell things and do something more oakboundy, also let me know to, stop. Stop. We don't want to see your stuff. We want to talk about other things. That's also cool. I'll try not to do too many like show and tell videos because they're a bit boring, aren't they? But anyway, it's good for me. It's good for me to document that I did all of this anyway. So thank you for joining me for the ramble, and I shall see you again soon.